These episodes are intended for mature audiences. Viewer and listener discretion advised. And it's just these little things that you are trying to learn and trying to understand in your mind that you can't wrap your mind around. And not really knowing how to share our emotions because as we grew up, mental health was this taboo thing. What? You need to go to a therapist? There's something wrong with you. That's what we were told. I started this podcast because I don't want to lose anybody else. I started this podcast because I saw that we don't know how to say that we are not okay. That we were never taught how to say that we are not okay and that I need your help. That we were never taught how to go to a friend and tell them what we are going through. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Want to apologize for the long wait. I've been really working on trying to figure out the right words for this episode. I believe I found them. Again, this is like the fifth time I'm recording this, so we'll see. But honestly, I have been really working on building a community here where I live. Thomas, one of the people who I used to know in Belgium, he lives here in Texas where I live. And so I have been hanging out with my brother and then my sister came down, Kirsten came down to visit. She went to Six Flags with her family, invited me, so I went to hang out with her. So I've really just been building a community and slowly I've joined a bike group. You guys will know more why about that later in a vlog. But I joined a bike group and I'm going to start biking with them during the week. Girls group and then like a girl intergender and whatever. Men and women group as well. There you go. So yeah, just slowly building my community, and I've kind of been focused on that over the last couple of weeks. And to be honest, this episode is a hard one to record because of the reasons why I started this podcast. But in order to get to that point, we have to start with, I guess, me as a kid. So for all of us as military brats, we have safe places because things change around us so much year by year for some, every couple of years for others. We all create a safe place for us to have a constant in. And as things around us change, this one thing does not. And so I'll share with you guys mine. Mine was basketball and the persona that I build around being the basketball player. I thought for a very long time that it was shape, but it wasn't. It was the person I was. And I believe that is because shape was continuously changing, just like everything else, was changing in my life, including myself. But the one thing that never changed was me being the basketball player. And that was my safe place. It was the place where I knew I was good. I knew it was where I belonged. And I knew it was something that wouldn't change, obviously, right? And so that is who I became. And so from 5 until 18, 19, I was that person. For a minute there, about a year, I stopped playing because in high school, basketball started to feel like a job. I was playing for my club team and my school team. If you haven't heard my story, go back to season 1, episode 1 and listen. But it started to feel like a job. And so I decided to take a break for a minute for about, a quarter, like a school quarter. So the fall season. And then I moved to the States, and that difference, that change really hit me. And so I thought I would go back to my safe place of being the basketball player. Didn't work out. That was no longer a safe place for me. It ended up being chaos. And so I had to really, again, figure out who I was outside of the basketball player that I thought that I was. And so that came a very hard time for me. College was really hard for me. I went through depression. I didn't really speak to people. I didn't share what I was going through with any of my friends or anybody that I was close with. I went through that alone. And a couple of years ago, over the pandemic, I lost 2 friends to suicide. Both were military brats. Both for a beautiful life in this world. Both were amazing, kind, loving people. And they lost the fight to depression. Chris and Jeremy were 2 beautiful people, 2 amazing people. And I went to Chris's funeral. It wasn't too far away from where I lived in Georgia, so I went to his funeral, and it hit hard. When you see somebody who is the same age as you, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. I think I said the most dumbest thing to his dad, which was like, yeah, we loved him to death. Like, but you're 24. You have no idea what to say. And you have no idea what to think about the situation other than, how did I miss this? Right? I believe that's how all of us who went to his funeral were thinking. How did we miss this? And so when I came home from his funeral, I started thinking, well, he went to Hawaii. We made plans to go to Iceland. What happened, right? But then I realized, with God, he showed me that, people can smile in your face and tell you they're okay, but as we all know, behind closed doors, what we don't see on social media, or what we don't see in the words that when we ask them, how are they doing, we don't see the hurt, we don't see the pain, we don't see the darkness. And so I started asking the question of, okay, how can we change this? How can we help military brats who are going through a dark thing, who are in a hard time, who are going through depression? How can we help them? And so that is when this podcast came about. I tell people all the time, God told me, hey, it's time for a change. Because my mom began doing this paper, and she's working on this paper, her dissertation. I can't look. There's some words I can say, and there's some words that are hard. Dissertation. Her paper for her doctorate's degree. I'm probably gonna put it on down there somewhere. But she started working on that during this time. And she started telling me about the struggles that we were going through, and about how military brats, during our young adult years, we are more prone to become drug addicts, and we're more prone to become alcoholics, and we're more prone to so many dangerous things because we are so used to that adrenaline. And I know you guys who are listening are probably like, but you guys weren't on the battlefield. You're right. We weren't on the battlefield, but our parents were on the battlefield. And in our minds, our parents are on the battlefield. We can't tell them what's going on. And man, if it's not our parents, it's somebody else's parents. And we can't tell our friends because right now their parents on the battlefield. And right now what they're thinking about is, man, I could lose a parent. And they're preparing themselves mentally for that daily, just in case, but knowing that their parent is okay. But at the same time, knowing that is a possibility that today could be the day that they get the call. And so we were never given the tools to deal with that. We were never given the tools to deal with being away from family. Like none of us grew up around our cousins or whatever. And if you did, really lucky. If you grew up around family, so lucky. A lot of us created our family out of the people that we were blessed to have around us. And so we were never given the tools to have healthy mental health. And it makes sense that my mom, as she's doing her research for those of young adults, and that carries over into adulthood, of how we are more prone to do things that just are dangerous for ourselves, because our brains are so used to being wired on that high adrenaline of this is a dangerous situation or this could possibly happen, that your brain starts to crave it. And so I started this podcast to start talking about the struggles of going from being at this high intensity of our parents and what they do and not really knowing how to share our emotions, because as we grew up, mental health was this taboo thing. What? You need to go to a therapist? There's something wrong with you. That's what we were told, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to go to therapy. You're just going through blah, 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 blah. We were told that growing up, and it wasn't, and our parents were told that as well. Mental health was not a thing of the military. It was not as important as it is now, as it is becoming in the military. And so for a lot of us, we struggled once we got out of high school, because we had a safe space and we had a safe place, and we did not know how to deal with this major change. This change that everything was planned out for you, right? You knew where to go, where not to go, how long you could be there, why you couldn't be there after a certain time. All these different things you knew, and you stayed within that lane. And now you go out into the world where you're like, what in the world is happening? And you go through these changes. Hey guys, we are on air. I know, right? So cool to have this. But I interrupt this podcast to ask you guys to please follow us on all of our social media sites. We have Instagram, YouTube, the podcast on anywhere you get your podcast. And please share and like this episode and comment if this episode has affected you in any way. Because the more you comment, the more you like, the more you share, the more people we reach. And the more people we reach means the more the story of mental health and military brats change. So please go and follow us on all of these websites, and please share it with whoever and whomever you believe these stories will help change. Because I know that all of these stories thus far has already helped change my life. So again, I thank you guys for watching, and please like, share, comment, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Because the friends that you had in high school, well, a lot of them, most of them, aren't going to the same college as you, aren't in the same state as you, and you can't really go home because most likely your parents moved when you graduated. And so now the friends that you would typically see at Christmas or Thanksgiving or summer, you don't. Luckily for me, my mom stayed in Belgium for another 2 years, so I did get to see some of my friends that were still there. But now, when she moved in 2016, that all changed. I stopped seeing the friends that I would typically see, and my mental health really took a nosedive during that time in college. And it's just these little things that you are trying to learn and trying to understand in your mind that you can't wrap your mind around. Like the tools that were survival tools that you used in high school, well, you can't use them now because it's a different situation. It's a different place. And honestly, when you use them, they might work at the beginning, but they stop working after a while because the survival tools that you use for your mental health were never healthy in the first place. And so I created this podcast to share our stories, to share the tools that are needed to have good mental health. I believe by sharing stories, we can see ourselves in somebody else's story and relate to them, and then help us realize that in this dark place, yes, this too shall pass, and you will get out on the other side. And I also created it so that it can be the primary resource for military brats to come to listen and to hear about the different tools and the different resources that are needed to have good mental health. I'm going to be having experts on, yes, do I think I can have them right now? Maybe not. Maybe not right now. But one day I'm going to have experts on to talk about the different ways that we can better our mental health through finances. Because we know we in the middle of the time where finances are tight, especially for us as adult in our adulthood, about to be 30. The economy ain't helping us. And it's not helping us mentally either. And how can we use our finances in the right way during the holidays or throughout the year that can also help with our mental health? Because when you are financially stressed, you're going to be mentally stressed because that's all you're going to think about. And you're not going to get the sleep you need. You're not going to exercise in the way you need. You're not going to eat in the way you need. And then also with physical health as well. Working out, exercising gets you that dopamine. And we can also talk about those tools of how a certain amount of time daily of exercise is good for us to have good mental health, as well as nutrition, sleep, beyond all of that. I want this to be the one-stop shop for military brats to come to and get everything they need to build a life around mental health that works for you. So that is why I started this podcast. I started this podcast because I don't want to lose anybody else. I started this podcast because I saw that we don't know how to say that we are not okay. That we were never taught how to say that we are not okay and that I need your help. That we were never taught how to go to a friend and tell them what we are going through. But we were always taught how to be there for somebody else, but now how to ask them to be there for us. And so I'm hoping that this podcast does that. I'm working on making this podcast do that. Because there's too much light in us for it to continue to go out. And I'm hoping that the light of the people that we've lost so far is shown and is shining so bright within this podcast now. Yeah, there's my reason, guys. I don't want to lose anybody else. And I want this podcast to be a way where we don't. Where the stories we share help each other, and where the tools that are shared on this help us build a better mental health foundation for us all. So that's it. So that's why I started this podcast. I started this podcast to be the light that we need in the darkness, to show us that we are not alone, that we have each other, that we have this community. And I know right now it's an online community, and I'm hoping, I keep saying hoping, and one day, because we're just going to do it. We're going to speak it into existence. And one day, this community will be able to meet in person. Rather you're in Texas or Georgia, or you're in New York, or you're in Belgium, or you're in Japan, wherever you are, I want this community to be able to meet in person, go to a coffee shop, talk to each other on the Facebook group that I've created called Stories of a Dandelion, and say, hey, if you want to meet up to have a tea or a coffee and just talk about your day or talk about how you're feeling today or what you've been going through, let's meet up and do it. Let's be a community for one another. Let's be a person somebody can lean on and let them know that it's okay for them to tell you what they're going through, their struggles, their darkness right now. That is what I want to come out of this podcast. And I hope it already has. I hope that you're online and you've reconnected with somebody that you may have known that has been on this podcast, and you guys talk and you guys share and you guys really be like, wow, I didn't know this about you. Because trust me, for me, every single story, even with the people I was closest to in high school, I didn't know a lot of their stories. Because when we became friends, well, we all know we're selfish people. We're selfish beings, and we don't ask about why or how did you get here. And trust me, I had a lot of friends in middle school and in high school who went through dark periods and who were battling different things in high school and in middle school. But we never had the tools to deal with those things, to deal with the darkness. But now we will. So with this podcast, I want to have the tools. I've already said this. Anyway, the tools, the stories, the community, that is why I created this podcast. And so thank you guys for listening. I don't have anything else other than happy holidays. There will be another episode where I'll be sharing with you guys a little bit of how I have been dealing with the financial struggles of the holidays. It is weird. It is crazy. But I realized that the way we look, or the way I looked at money, isn't the way that I should look at money. And since I've shifted that mindset of how I look at it and how I interact with it and how I use it, it has really made a positive impact on my mental health. And I want to share that with you all next week. So stay tuned for next week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope that the way I explained why I started the podcast made sense. And yeah, this podcast is really important to me. And I can't wait to see where it goes. So I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on this one. I love you guys. And this is our dandelion story. This podcast right here. So I'll see you guys next Monday. Peace. Oh, God. guys enjoyed this episode. There are a ton more tea time episodes, as well as stories that are going to be shared on this podcast to come. So please like and subscribe or follow down below. And I will see you all next Military Brat Monday. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I am so excited to continue this journey with all of you.